Shakespeare's workplace, the city in which he spent the greatest part of his life, was London. He spent much of his time in the capital living and working north of the Thames, in the City of London. The city today is a very different place from the Elizabethan streets that Shakespeare would have known, but you can still discover many fascinating traces of his life and legacy. London's streets were notoriously narrow and congested. As the population increased to 200,000 in 1600, street travel became a particularly cumbersome affair. The streets were a noisy place, salesmen shouted out their wares, bells rang and beggars could be heard on every street corner. Hygiene was a serious problem. Fleet Street was one of London's better-known streets. Here puppet shows, naked Indians, and strange fishes were put on display for the public's amusement. Asterisk. We will follow in the footsteps of the world-renowned dramatist and discover the city he made his home. In 1540 the church became the property of the crown once again, when King Henry VIII abolished the Knights Hospitaller in England and confiscated their property. Henry provided a priest for the church under the former title, Master of the Temple. In the 1580s the church was the scene of the Battle of the Pulpits, theological conflict between the Puritans and supporters of the Elizabethan Compromise. Shakespeare was familiar with the site and the church and garden feature in his play Henry VI, Part 1 as the setting for the fictional scene of the plucking of 2 roses of York and Lancaster and the start of the Wars of the Roses. In 2002 this event was commemorated with the planting of new white and red roses in the modern gardens. Middle Temple Hall was built between 1562 and 1573 and has the finest Elizabethan interior in London. On the 2nd of February 1602, the first recorded performance of Twelfth Night took place here. Temple Church was completed by the Knights Templar in 1185 and contains, as it would have in Shakespeare's day, sculptures of the old knights, commonly referred to by playwrights of the time. The original St. Pauls Cathedral was built in 1087 and destroyed by fire in 1666 during the Great Fire of London. The current St. Paul's Cathedral was designed by Sir Christopher Wren and built in the English Baroque style. The cathedral's most recognizable feature is its large dome, which weighs over 65,000 tons. The area around St. Paul's Cathedral was a busy center of activity during Shakespeare's time. It was a place to buy and sell goods, get news, and be seen. The first folio, the first collected edition of Shakespeare's plays, was sold in St. Paul's churchyard. Shakespeare left Stratford in 1587 and went to London. The first record of William Shakespeare in London is of him living in Bishopsgate in 1596. Shakespeare lived in London till 1613. Most of Guildhall Great Hall was built during the reigns of Henry IV, Henry of Bolingbroke in Shakespeare's plays, and Henry V, between 1411 and 1430. It is home to the City of London Corporation and has been the centre of city government since the Middle Ages. The Great Hall was also used for important trials, including that of Henry Garnet, a Jesuit implicated in the Gunpowder Plot of 1605. Guildhall Library houses one of the precious first folios. Whilst many copies survived, very few are in mint condition. The copy housed at Guildhall Library is considered one of the 5 best in the world. Two of Shakespeare's fellow actors, Henry Condell and John Hemminger, are buried in the churchyard of St. Mary Aldermanbury. After Shakespeare's death in 1616, Condell and Hemminger played a vital role in publishing the first folio edition of his works, collecting together 36 of his plays. Without the first folio, nearly half of Shakespeare's plays would have been lost. The church was bombed during the Blitz in 1940s and never rebuilt. Today there is a beautiful garden with a monument to the two men, topped by a bust of Shakespeare. Without the dedication of Condell and Hemminger, it is likely that a lot of Shakespeare's work would have been lost. By the mid-16th century, the London Wall was no longer a primary defence of London due to the city's expansion. The wall was built on the Roman wall and was maintained and repaired throughout the Middle Ages. William Shakespeare's early work in London included plays, poems, and acting in the theatre company The Lord Chamberlain's Men. His early plays were Henry VI, Parts 1, 2, and 3, The Taming of the Shrew, Titus Andronicus, an early tragedy, The Two Gentlemen of Verona. Early poems included Venus and Adonis, an erotic poem published in 1593, The Rape of Lucrece, a long poem published in 1594. As a member of the acting company called the Chamberlain's Men, which from 1603 were known as the King's Men, Shakespeare enjoyed the patronage of the Lord Chamberlain George Carey II, Lord Hunsdon, and then of James I. Early in his career as a writer, Shakespeare dedicated Venus and Adonis, 1593, and The Rape of Lucrece, 1594, to Henry Wriothesley, 3rd Earl of Southampton. Century, Wormwood Street in London was part of a long street that ran inside the London Wall. The street was named after the wild plants that grew around the wall, including wormwood, plant that was once used as a medicinal herb. The street survived the Great Fire of London in 1666. Shakespeare started his London life north of the River Thames, in the city. The parish of St Helens in Bishopsgate was his home until around 1596. It was literally the Bishop's Gate, the eastern gate, that was part of the City of London's protective wall. We are on Bishopsgate, and on the left we have St Helens Bishopsgate, an Anglican church in London. It is located in Great St Helens, off Bishopsgate. It is the largest surviving parish church in the City of London. Several notable figures are buried there, and it contains more monuments than any other church in Greater London except Westminster Abbey. Hence it is sometimes referred to as the Westminster Abbey of the city. It was the parish church of William Shakespeare when he lived in the area in the 1590s. It was one of only a few churches in the City of London to survive both the Great Fire of 1666 and the Blitz. Bishopsgate is one of the oldest streets in London, dating back to the Roman period. The name comes from the Bishop's Gate, an original city entrance, and was once home to the Bishop of London's palace. In the Middle Ages, it became a centre of trade and commerce. The Great Fire of London in the 17th century destroyed much of the area, but it was rebuilt with 18th and 19th century buildings. The iconic Leadenhall Market dates back to the 14th century and is situated between Leadenhall Street, Gracechurch Street and Lime Street. In the 16th century, Leadenhall Market in London was a busy marketplace selling meat, poultry, dairy, wool, leather and cutlery. The Great Fire of 1666 entirely burned down what Shakespeare would have known as Lime Street, the hub of London's scientific community and where wool and materials were weighed. During the summertime, the space was used for making and storing materials shown at midsummer pageants, which everyone, including Shakespeare, would enjoy. The physical space and social milieu of early modern Lime Street was detailed in John Stow's 1598 survey of London, where it was recognised as a street favoured by the worthiest citizens of London, due to its wealthy merchants' houses.
this time. And I've got a barrister.
Yeah.
So,
The Romans had chosen the location of London, of course, because it was the first point that the river was narrow enough to erect a bridge across it using the technology of the day, and London Bridge had been for centuries a thriving centre of commerce. In Shakespeare's time it was lined with over 100 buildings, many with shops on the ground floor and houses above, stalls, and even the 4-story palace, none such house, so named because there was none such like it in all of Europe. With a plaque on its south side facing the river that read, "The time and tide stay for no man." One of Shakespeare's contemporaries, Michael Drayton, nicely sums up London pride in their Thames, with that most costly bridge that doth him most renown, by which he clearly puts all other rivers down. The old London Bridge was one of the architectural splendours of the city, a work very rare. It seemed rather a continual street than a bridge. John Stowe, 1598. In Shakespeare's day it was the only bridge that crossed the Thames to the city. It stood 480 metres, 800 feet, long, was built of stone, and featured houses and shops all along its length. Most sold goldsmiths' work, jewellery, and pins, a speciality of the bridge. Although heavily altered from repair work after the 17th century fires, London Bridge survived until it was replaced in 19th century. It was replaced again in 20th century. London Bridge was the only bridge that connected the northern and southern sides of Elizabethan London, and Shakespeare would literally have walked across London Bridge several times a week. Well-off Elizabethan commuters hired ferrymen to ferry them across and along the Thames.
That's true.
In Shakespeare's time, Southwark Cathedral was the parish church of St. Saviour's and St. Mary over the water. Shakespeare's brother Edmund was buried at St. Saviour's on the 31st of December 1607, during the height of the Great Frost.
Okay, so I would like chicken burger. You want
In the 16th century, Borough Market in London was a busy market on the south bank of the Thames. It was a hub for traders selling livestock, produce, and other goods. The market was often chaotic, with the sounds of market traders, cattle, and other activity filling the air. The market was filled with traders selling a variety of goods, including fish, meat. Farmers would bring their herds of cattle to the market to sell. The market was often chaotic, with the sounds of market traders, cattle, and other activity filling the air. One set of rules from the 16th century required that traders set up their stalls in a fixed sequence, no more than a yard from the drainage channel running down the street, with the fish sellers closest to the bridge, followed by the butchers, the poulterers from the countryside, the oatmeal makers, the fruiterers and herb sellers, then finally the local bakers and poulterers. A further set of ordinances from 1624 proved similarly rigorous, but with the traders lined up in a different order and with the further proviso that fishwives be forced to stay on their feet in the face of growing chaos. In the 16th century, Bankside was a rowdy pleasure quarter in London, known for its theatres, brothels, and gambling dens. It was located outside the city walls, making it a natural landing place for outsiders and free thinkers. Bankside was home to 3 theatres, including the Globe, which was built in 1599. Bankside was known for its brothels, including the Winchester Geese, which were licensed by the Bishop of Winchester. Bankside was home to gambling dens. Bankside was home to industries that supported global maritime trade routes, including tanneries, dyers, and glassworks. Shakespeare produced most of his known works between 1589 and 1613. His early plays were primarily comedies and histories and are regarded as some of the best works produced in these genres. He then wrote mainly tragedies until 1608, among them Hamlet, Othello, King Lear, and Macbeth, all considered to be among the finest works in English. In the last phase of his life, he wrote tragicomedies, also known as romances, such as The Winter's Tale and The Tempest, and collaborated with other playwrights. William Shakespeare's later career was closely tied to the Globe Theatre, an outdoor playhouse in London where he performed his plays. Shakespeare was a shareholder in the Globe Theatre Company and co-owned the theatre with other leading actors. He wrote many of his most famous plays, including Hamlet, Othello, and King Lear, at the Globe. Shakespeare's investment in the Globe Theatre. In 1599, Shakespeare invested 12.5% of the cost of building the Globe Theatre. The Globe Theatre was built in 1599 and burned down in 1613. The Globe Theatre was a popular venue for London's Elizabethan theatre scene. The Globe Theatre was the site of many famous plays, including Julius Caesar, Hamlet, Othello, King Lear, Antony and Cleopatra, and Macbeth. The current Globe Theatre opened in 1997. We have followed in the footsteps of the world-renowned dramatist and discover the city he made his home.